We all dream about finding the perfect partner to spend the rest of our lives with. But even after being married for years, we often find out new and unexpected things about the person we thought we knew best. When 82-year-old Martha decided to surprise her husband Greg by cleaning out his workshop, she never expected to uncover a decade-long family secret. She couldn't have known that his past would completely change their lives forever. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Despite her age, 82-year-old Martha Barlow was energetic and spirited. Her husband Greg was as scruffy and disordered as his old workshop, yet every bit as loving and gentle as she was. While they had opposite personalities, Martha and Greg were the perfect elderly couple. After over 60 years of marriage, it seemed that nothing could get between the couple. But Martha would soon find something that would threaten to end their decades-long bond. Martha and Greg met when they were 16. They were instantly smitten by each other, roaming the locker-lined hallways of high school. Soon after they graduated from college, they ended up tying the knot. Greg and Martha's love story was one for the books. They were perfect for each other. Over the decades, they built their world filled with laughter, patience, and immense respect for each other. As Martha walked down the memory lane of their life together, she thought she knew all the chapters. Unknowingly, everything in her life was about to change. While Martha was happy with the life they built together, there was one thing about Greg that got on her last nerves. Even though Martha tried her best to ignore it, she couldn't get over Greg's messy workshop. Having had enough of her husband's disorganized stacks of photos and documents, Martha decided to surprise him by organizing his workshop. Martha had to wrestle with Greg to let her sweep clean his little haven. After much persuasion, Greg gave in, thinking that order would benefit him too. Little did he know, things were about to take an unexpected turn. With Greg's approval, Martha returned to the battleground of her husband's crowded workshop. She started her mission with purpose, sorting through a mountain of old papers, faded sketches, and crumbling photographs. After cleaning for what felt like forever, Martha stumbled upon a box that had belonged to her late in-laws. She diligently pored over several stacks of old photographs. She flipped through the old prints, reminiscing nostalgically on her husband's family history. But one photo caught her attention. It was of a man standing cheerfully in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. She couldn't help but think something was off about that photograph. Her heart started pounding loudly in her chest. The man in the picture looked identical to her husband Greg, but they had never been to Paris before. A sea of questions started swirling around in her head. Was the man in the photograph her husband? Had Greg taken a secret trip to Paris without telling her? Or was the man in the photo a stranger who bore a striking resemblance to Greg? Before she could drive herself crazy with questions, a chilling thought crossed Martha's mind. She remembered Greg had an identical twin named Doug. Greg's brother had led a much different life and perished in a tragic boating accident decades ago. Over the years, she had pretty much forgotten about Doug, and Greg rarely mentioned his twin. It had to be Greg in the photos. It was the only rational explanation. Turning the photo, Martha gasped at the words inked on the back of the photograph. Martha squinted hard to make out the words scribbled behind the photo. May 2002, Paris, France, they read. This meant the photo had to have been taken long after Doug's passing. How could this be? Things weren't adding up. Trembling with the photo in hand, Martha felt a shiver coursing down her spine. Martha couldn't contain her curiosity. A million questions raced in her mind. She gathered her courage and approached Greg with the photo in hand. "Greg, honey, have you seen this photo before? Do you know when it was taken?" she asked, trying not to spook him. To her surprise, Greg had no explanation for it. He was just as confused as she was. "Martha, I have no idea. You know we've never been to Paris," he said, shrugging. Greg's odd demeanor only spurred Martha to dig deeper, but she felt conflicted. A part of her wished to keep the photograph and its possible implications buried. At last, Martha decided to brush the eerie photograph aside and move on with cleaning her husband's workshop and other daily chores. She hid the photo in a safe place, keeping it out of sight, but not out of mind. Would it be that easy for her to move on? Over the next few days, Martha did her best to push the mysterious photograph out of her mind, but the more she tried to distract herself, the more she thought about the photo. Night after night, Martha lost sleep pining over the fate of Doug. Her mind swirled with questions about whether his life actually ended with a tragic death, or if he was alive and well. Wanting to get answers, she took the photo out of its hiding place. She couldn't live her life knowing that what she knew about her husband's brother could be a complete lie. So, in her quest for truth, she dived back into Greg's dusty past. This time, Martha wasn't holding back. She needed to get some answers. She began sifting through countless pieces of the past, one after the other, looking for any inkling into the elusive story of Doug. But box after box, Martha found nothing and began to lose hope. Martha felt she had hit a dead end. Her intuition told her that the answers were in her husband's workshop. She just had to find them. Thinking she may have missed something, Martha went back to the box where she originally found the photo. Then, one item caught her attention. It was an old notebook that had belonged to Greg's late parents. Martha pulled it out, dusted it off, and opened it, revealing worn-out pages filled with jottings. When she finally opened it, she couldn't believe what she saw. From cover to cover, the notebook was filled with old phone numbers. Martha felt vindicated, knowing that her efforts were not in vain. With this new information, she didn't hesitate to get to the bottom of the mystery. Like a convicted investigator, Martha sat by the phone, opened the notebook, and started dialing each number one by one. With each ring that echoed out of the phone, the aura of suspense grew thicker. But after every number she dialed, Martha's efforts weren't greeted with any progress. Each person she spoke to gave her the same explanation. Doug had tragically died in a boating accident many years ago. She was reaching the end of the notebook and no closer to finding out the truth. Had she wasted all this time only for this mystery to remain unresolved? But there was still one last number to call. Would she finally get some answers? Taking a deep breath, she dialed the final number, expecting to get the same story as the others. The ring echoed in her ears, reverberating with the pounding of her heart. Introducing herself as Greg's wife, the suspicious-sounding gruff voice on the other side greeted her with a solemn, "Hello?" The man on the other end appeared to be standoffish and was curious as to how Martha got his phone number. He wouldn't reveal his name or identity, but Martha felt compelled to be upfront with him. She was characteristically honest, telling him how she found the peculiar photo while snooping through Greg's workshop. "I found your phone number in one of his parents' old notebooks," Martha told the stranger on the other end. She then suggested they meet so they could discuss the photograph face to face. Though hesitant at first, the man reluctantly agreed. The next day, the two met at the park. Martha waited under the green canopy of the tall oak tree, burning with anticipation. It felt like she was waiting forever. Before she knew it, an oddly familiar figure started approaching her. He looked just like her husband. She couldn't believe the resemblance. The man introduced himself as Doug. Martha's heart almost missed a beat. "It's nice to meet you, Martha," Doug said, breaking the silence. "I thought you were dead." "We all did," Martha replied, surprised by the words that came out of her mouth. "You deserve to know the truth," Doug began. "We never met in high school because I fell into a bad crowd. Instead of going to class, I was planning carjackings. And we were good. Got away with them for years. I hid it from my parents, Greg, and basically everyone," he continued. Greg was a good kid. While he was getting good grades and meeting his high school sweetheart, I became a vagrant, snatching up stolen cars, flipping them, rinsing, and repeating for 5 years. "But our success was short-lived," he went on. "Our sins caught up to us eventually. Things turned bad quickly, and I lost my whole crew in one night. I was in dire straits and had to figure out my escape. I couldn't keep up the charade of living a double life, so the first thing I did was come clean to our parents," Doug confessed. Martha was holding on to every word he was saying. "So, what did you do? How did you get out of it?" she asked. "I took the family boat out to sea, crashed it, and disappeared. My parents declared me dead, cashed the insurance check, and they took that secret to the grave," Doug replied. As Doug finished his story, he told Martha that, among all this action, Greg was none the wiser. While he was shedding his identity to escape the consequences of his crimes, Greg and Martha were oblivious, beginning their happy new life together as a married couple. The enigma began unraveling, but one question burned in Martha's mind. What about the photograph? "You went through all this effort to hide. Why did you leave evidence behind?" Martha asked. "I wanted to let my parents know I was safe, so no matter what, I sent them a photograph every year, which were all destroyed, or so I thought," Doug retorted. Now that Martha had unraveled the deep mystery behind the photograph, Doug shared the most devastating part of his story. His biggest regret was being estranged from his family. Touched by his genuine repentance, Martha assured him that he had a loving family waiting for him. With Martha's empathetic words, Doug decided he was ready to confront his past and meet Greg. As a gesture, Martha extended an invitation for dinner, hoping the long-lost brothers would restore their bond. At a loss for words, Doug gladly accepted the invitation. When Doug joined them for dinner that night, Martha couldn't believe her eyes upon seeing the twins side by side. Despite having been separated for all those years, the brothers embraced as if no time had passed when they reunited. As they sat together for the first time, Martha felt a profound sense of contentment and accomplishment. When Martha cleaned her husband's workshop, she never expected to stumble upon a photograph that would make her question everything. Luckily, Martha got the answers she was searching for and was able to reveal the truth about Greg's brother, who mysteriously died in a boating accident decades earlier. We wish Martha, Greg, and Doug all the best as they rekindle their relationship after all these years. We hope they make many more memories together.